Members, we're on Mr. Turner's amendment.
Mr. Turner has approximately 6 minutes left.
Mr. Turner, you have approximately 6 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Again, based on Section A1 of the bill, it simply says that doctors must obtain hospital admitting privileges. Based on the testimony that was given before State Affairs, the representative from the Texas Hospital Association indicated that most hospitals will not be granting admitting privileges to these doctors, thereby ending most abortions, whether it's 2 weeks or 20 weeks in the state of Texas. This amendment simply says that everything else remains in place in the bill. However, if hospitals within 30 miles have a written policy of not granting hospital admitting privileges, that the physician will not be bound by the section in the bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Wu, for what purpose?
The gentleman yield the question.
Mr. Turner, would you yield?
Yes, I do.
He will.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
Well, are you offering this amendment because you believe that in this current form the bill is too restrictive and places an undue burden on women seeking their constitutional right to have an abortion?
That is correct. In its present form, the bill's focus is not just on women who are pregnant for 20 weeks. The bill will have an impact on a woman who's pregnant, period, and seeks an abortion.
Is the intent of your amendment to more narrowly tailor the bill's restrictions to accomplish the bill's goal in the least restrictive way?
That is correct. That is the sole intent of this particular amendment.
Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Farrar, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield?
I'll be more than happy to yield.
You will.
Mr. Turner, you are aware that there are a number of religious hospitals in Texas.
Yes.
Are you aware that they won't even perform tubal ligations?
That is correct.
All right. And so is what you are trying to do provide care for women in those situations where religious hospitals would refuse to have or to grant visitation privileges to doctors who perform abortion care?
That is correct. Regardless, let's say you have a doctor who has a stellar record, an absolute outstanding record as a physician, but because of the philosophy of that particular hospital or because of their policy, they will not grant admitting privileges to that doctor that may have an outstanding medical record. This is to narrowly construct the bill so that it doesn't just outlaw abortions across the board.
And so in those situations where the only option is a religious hospital that has such a policy in place, what your amendment would do would be to actually take away from those hospitals the contemplation that they'd have to think twice about whether they put women's health at risk.
That is correct. I mean,
and so this would take this away from, they wouldn't even have to contemplate that.
That's correct. The testimony that you and I heard before State Affairs from the representative from the Hospital Association indicated that the hospitals, for liability purposes or for some religious purpose, may not grant any hospital privileges regardless of the doctor. So that takes the hospital kind of out of it and says to the doctors who cannot get hospital privileges by no burden of their own, that they can continue to service these women.
And so this amendment is really just an amendment to protect, to respect the positions of those religious institutions.
That is correct. It's not an attempt to kill the bill, but it is an attempt to narrowly construct the bill such that it doesn't arbitrarily prevent doctors in these clinics from offering the service to women.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Dukes, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield?
Would you yield,
happy to
Mr.
yield. Yes.
Chairman Turner, does a medical provider have to have admitting privileges in order to practice medicine?
No.
For admitting privileges, requirements for those who use a ASC just in order to perform a procedure, an abortion, does one have to have admitting principles in order to work in an ASC?
Say it one more time. I didn't have the last.
Does one have to have admitting privileges in order to work in an ASC?
Currently, no.
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 But in order to do a certain procedure, we're going to make those who work even at an ASC
Yes.
be required to have privileges to admit in a hospital?
The bill, yes. The bill goes further than that's what's required today by physicians who are practicing in ambulatory surgical centers.
Do primary care physicians have to have admitting
No.
privileges?
No.
No. So the last time that I had to go to my primary care physician, and she drained my knee, which was very painful, I would add, with a needle that was about that big, and I think that some of the tools that they use for the procedures we're talking about are as large and supposedly more painful. She didn't have to have admission principles?
She did not have to have admitting privileges to a hospital in order to attend to your injury or to your knee.
Okay. I think you have a good amendment.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your support.
Ms. King, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman
Be
yield?
more than happy to yield.
He will.
Yes.
Representative Turner, is there a duty by hospitals now to give admitting privileges to any physician that seeks those?
Based on the testimony that was presented by the witness representing the Hospital Association, she indicated that they are not obligated to grant any medical hospital privileges to these physicians.
So there's no state law in place that says a hospital is compelled to give admitting privileges to a physician. Is that correct?
There's nothing in state law that compels them to do that, and there's nothing in this bill that will compel them either.
What about the physicians that do abortions in their offices that are not licensed as an abortion facility? Are those physicians that are practicing in an ambulatory surgical center, would this include those, do you know, with those physicians which are, they are numbered and calculated by the Department of State Health Services, would they be required as well to have admitting privileges for this purpose?
I'm assuming the way I read the bill is requiring any physician that seeks to undertake an abortion, that they must have admitting privileges.
Mr. Stevenson, raise a point of order. Gentleman's time has expired. The point of order is well taken and sustained.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I hope this amendment is acceptable to the author, and so being, we can hold hands.
Chair recognizes Ms. Lautenberg.
I love you. Okay. Respectfully, Representative Sylvester Turner, I will move to table this. This amendment essentially nullifies the requirement that abortion physicians have admitting privileges. Hospitals do not need any written policy to deny admitting privileges, and the amendment would actually create a reason to delete this part of the bill by default if the hospital puts something in writing and the physician is now not required to apply for admitting privileges.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Smithy, for what purpose?
Will the lady yield?
Would you yield, Ms. Lautenberg? She will.
Ms. Lautenberg, I, as well as you, we were both present at that state affairs hearing that Mr. Turner alluded to a moment ago, where the representative from the Hospital Association testified. And I think the House needs to be aware of of the full testimony that lobbyist or that representative gave. And I think there's been a little bit of a misleading impression given. And first of all, are you aware, are any of the physicians who are currently performing abortions in Texas, are any of those physicians currently credentialed with admitting privileges at Texas hospitals?
Yes, Representative Smithy. Out of the 59 physicians that perform abortions, 37, approximately two-thirds, have admitting privileges now.
And also, I went ahead and asked that representative about, she made a global statement that the hospital simply wouldn't credential or grant admitting privileges. And I asked her specifically what that global conclusionary statement was based on, and she had no evidentiary basis, no factual basis. And finally admitted it was mere speculation and conjecture on her part. Well, we don't make laws, do we, based on conjecture and speculation?
No, we don't.
And the record that is before the hearing, I would call it less than credible evidence that the premise of this amendment, i.e. that hospitals will just refuse to credential any of these people for any arbitrary reason. I find no objective, credible evidence that that's the case. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Giddings, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, will the lady yield for some
Would you yield, Ms. Lautenberg?
Yes, I
She will.
Yes, Representative Laubenberg, you were in State Affairs having presented your bill when the Texas Hospital Association's representative came to testify before the House Committee on State Affairs on July 2nd.
Yes,
Is that correct?
Yes.
And she gave to the House State Affairs Committee a written copy of her remarks. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not, and I did not get a copy of those remarks.
Okay. Well, the remarks by the Texas Hospital Association's testimony in opposition to Section 2 of House Bill 2 by Jody Laubenberg relating to the regulation of abortion procedures, providers, and facilities is an official copy, is an official part of the minute, and it says that PHA agrees that women should receive high-quality care and physicians should be held accountable. However, a requirement that physicians who perform one particular outpatient procedure, abortion, be privileged at a hospital is not the appropriate way to accomplish these goals. Do you remember that testimony?
I cannot remember it word for word. I'm sorry. You're reading it, so I don't question what you're saying.
Those are the exact words.
Okay.
And as it relates to what Chairman Smithy was asking questions about, they also gave us a handout that said overview of hospital credentialing and privileging of physicians. And this is what that paragraph said. And I want to see if you recall this being read into the record. If a physician does not perform any procedures in the hospital or performs a procedure that the hospital does not perform, there is no process for the hospital to grant privileges to that physician. Thus, if the hospital does not perform elective abortions, a physician seeking privileges to perform abortions would not be granted those privileges, according to the Texas Hospital Association. Do you recall that testimony?
Again, I don't have it in front of me, so I have no doubt she said what she said. There was testimony by a physician who sat on the admitting panel for a local hospital who very specifically said that he admits abortion doctors, that's all they do, and there wasn't a problem. And I believe there was another statement I'd written down in my notes, because that one caught my attention, that on their application that it doesn't even ask about abortions. And again, we're not forcing the hospitals to admit someone.
And Representative Laubenberg, I remember the person you're talking about. That person testified, and he was affiliated with a faith-based organization. And he did not say that that physician was admitted to do abortion procedures in that hospital. Is that right?
Was that St. David's Hospital?
That is the person that you and I are both referring to,
right.
Except that he did not say that the doctor was admitted to perform abortion procedures in that hospital.
Actually, not to perform their specific procedure, but they did have admitting privileges. So, and actually I'm looking at the list, and St. David's has given admitting privileges to a physician who does perform abortions. But they don't have to perform them at that facility.
Because basically what they've said as an example is just because someone is a cardiologist, they might not be permitted to do cardiac catheterization. So physicians are usually admitted to do particular procedures. So an OBGYN could be admitted to do other procedures and perform other services that don't have to do with abortion. Is that correct?
Well, I'm looking here at the occupations code, and it says that a hospital or healthcare facility may not discriminate against a physician, nurse, staff member, or employee because of the person's willingness to participate in an abortion procedure at another facility.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but that's quite different from my question. It's not whether or not they discriminate, and it wouldn't be a case of discrimination if the hospital's policy is only to admit people to perform the services that are performed by the hospital.
What they're looking for on the admitting privileges are the complications and the treatment of the patient. That would be what they would be doing at the hospital, that they would be applying for the admitting privileges for.
Would you tell me that again, please? I'm sorry.
I know it's very echoing in here.
Yes, it is.
So the abortion physician applying for the privileges, the admitting privileges, would be to treat the patient if there is a complication with the abortion, not for the abortion itself, but if there is a post-abortion complication. It would be for the continued care of the patient.
Okay. Well, let me talk about hospital admitting privileges, which is what this is about. Generally speaking, if a person has an emergency, they may or may not end up in a hospital where there are admitting privileges for a particular physician. For instance, in the city of Dallas, most physicians who have admitting privileges at Presbyterian don't have admitting privileges at Methodist or Baylor or some other hospital. They tend to have admitting privileges in only one hospital. And if you have an emergency, you could end up going to any of those hospitals. And it very well may be a hospital where your physician does not have admitting privileges.
Mr. Senator, point of order. The gentlelady's time has expired. The point of order is well taken and sustained.